Hi, I'm Rick Kaler. Thanks for joining me. With demonstrators shouting in the streets, chaos in government, politicians leaving the Capitol. No, I'm not describing the Middle East. I'm talking about Wisconsin and Governor Scott Walker's proposal to reduce the bargaining power of public employee unions. When politicians attack special interest groups, we tend to think of greedy corporate fat cats or small business owners or various types of wealthy investors all jockeying to get the best possible deal from the government on all sorts of things like grants and taxes and better regulations. But surprisingly, the largest special interest group of all is none of these. It is those who work for the government and the unions that represent them. No single interest group gives more to politicians than all of the public unions. Now, according to January 8th, 2011 issue of The Economist, and if you know The Economist, they're not exactly a conservative publication. Over the past 30 years, private union membership fell from 44% to just 15%, while public union membership increased from 11% to 36%. There are now more U.S. workers in unions in the public sector than in the private sector, even though the private workforce is 5 times larger than the public. Now, as a result of all of this, The Economist notes public sector jobs are a, quote, haven of security and stability. The result is a paradox. The typical public worker is better off than the people he is supposed to serve, and the gap has widened significantly over the past decade. In America, pay and benefits have grown twice as fast in the public sector as they have in the private sector. End quote. According to an August 13, 2010 article in USA Today that cited statistics from the Bureau of Economic Analysis, federal compensation is up 36.9% from 2000, that's adjusted for inflation, compared with an increase of just 8.8% for private workers. Put it another way, the public compensation is up almost 4 times over private. Now, federal civil servants' average wages are 60% higher than those of their private counterparts, and their benefits 300% greater. In 2009, the average public sector worker earned $50,462 in wages, and benefits were $10,589. A non-military civil servant working for the federal government earned $81,258 in wages, with $41,791 in benefits. Add that together, the civil service federal worker earns twice as much as the person in private employ. Now, additionally, many public workers, including state and local employees, can retire in their mid-50s on close to full pay, something pretty much unheard of in the private sector. So in general, lower-level public workers are paid more than their private sector counterparts, while higher-level public workers are usually paid much less than their peers in the private sector. So only recently have workers in the private sector awoken to the disparity that has developed in private and public sector wages. It's not surprising that private sector workers are losing sympathy for their public sector counterparts and are beginning to call for serious cuts in public sector wages and benefits. One of the largest debts that governments have rung up over the great spending spree of the past 20 years is in public pensions. The Economist estimates that states alone have close to $5 trillion in unfunded its unfunded pension liabilities. One area of possible reform in public wages would be to bring public sector jobs into parity with private sector. Yet changing courses is not going to be easy. Many left-of-center political parties in the most developed countries are largely backed by public unions. In England, the Labour Party gets 80% of its funding from public sector unions. In the U.S., teachers alone accounted for 1/10 of the delegates to the Democratic Convention in 2008. Major corporations have routinely slashed promised pension benefits because of financial woes. Delta and United come to mind that significantly slashed their promised pensions. Yet even mentioning the possibility of freezing or reducing public benefits brings people worldwide out of their seats and into the streets. The uproar in Wisconsin may be only the first sign of things to come. Thanks for joining me.